Hello. Sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties on my end with my internet connection here, but we are now live with Captain Jamie Allen. And thanks for your patience. We really appreciate it. And we are going to be talking saltwater fishing. You can see back here, I had to scramble and move some stuff. But let's go live with Captain Jamie and Rob Schmidt. We're going to talk all things saltwater. And feel free to ask your questions over to the right here.
All righty.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
Want me just to start?
yeah, go ahead. Just got
All
an
right, guys.
introduction and
Thanks for having me on tonight. Miss you guys a bunch. Love Durango. Lived there for nearly 10 years and great friends with a lot of the Durango people. It's always fun to come back and see them. Florida was not my idea, but now I got here and I've been here almost 20 years. It's been a great experience. I've found out a lot of new things about the area. The area that we're in is the southwestern area, kind of in between Sarasota and Naples. Um, you can fish 12 months out of the year. Maybe January would probably be the poopiest month to come fishing in, kind of the worst weather month. But other than that, you can catch a lot of different kinds of species here. Um, as you know, saltwater is a little different than the fresh, or maybe you don't know that. Um, a lot of what we do is fishing streamer type flies. So if you're familiar with throwing streamers, you'll probably be fine down here. And we do throw some little shrimps and crabs and different things. Um, it's a great place. The Boba Grande area where I live is a quiet little tiny community. It can be a great family location too. You can come down and bring your kids. Nate Bronson and his wife Tammy have been coming down with Chase and Annie for a number of years, and they'd run a little condo on the beach. I want to say it was like $1,000 for the week, and you could do hangout time. You can fish from the beach if you're here in the warmer months. Snook is an option. There's a variety of different fish you can just kind of walk around and catch. So maybe you just wanted to jump in a boat one day or two and fish. You could do that. But you can still hang out and do stuff and have a great family trip. It's a quiet little community. You jump in a golf cart and run around all the way island. It's not like Miami or Lauderdale or even the Keys. It's much quieter.
Yep.
We have a great number of species to fish for. Um, year-round redfish, snook, and seatrout are available. As the water starts warming up, the migratory tarpon start moving in, and that's going to be, and that can vary. That's basically when we get water temperatures in around 75 degrees, we're going to start seeing the bigger migratory fish. But there's juvenile tarpon. If you don't want to mess with big ones, you can do those. And the late summer has a lot of real fun, say 15 to 30 to 40 pound fish that you can fish on a 9-weight. Yes, casting is generally a little bit different than nymphing on the wand or something. You're going to be throwing 40, 50, or 60 feet. Um, it's not. It's something that you should spend a little time practicing before you come down to do it, just to get used to the heavier weights. Our inshore species, you can fish a 6, 7, or an 8, and as we start progressing into like bigger tarpon or cobia or or even the juvenile tarpon, the 15 to 30 pounders, a 9-weight is fine. That's a great way to cut your teeth if you want to try tarpon. The late summer stuff, meaning the second half of July into August and September, gives you opportunities to have a great chance to hook a fish. The water's a little off color. They're not really so spooky, and the only reason they're there is to eat. So that makes it a nice opportunity to hook your first tarpon. We have cobia, we have snappers, we have pompano, we have a few permit. Um, Rob and Andy can tell you there are some great rental boats that you can get at Walmart that you can paddle out, and they might sink a little bit in the middle of the night. So maybe that's not a good idea, but you could also try to be adventurous like those guys were, and you can ask them about that later. Some of you probably already know, and some of you may not, but that's what the adventurous anglers do. There's a number of places you can fly into. Maybe if you're visiting somebody, family members or wherever, you can fly them to Orlando. That's going to be a little over 2 hours. For Tampa is an easy hub to get into. It's about an hour and a half to hour and 45. Fort Myers is about an hour and 15, hour and 20. And some, depending where you are, you can fly into Punta Gorda, and Punta Gorda is about 40 minutes away. So you got a number of options to fly in to get here. Driving's pretty long, but you can literally fish here 12 months of the year. I would say the toughest time is January. Other than that, pretty good. So that's kind of my lead in. And if anybody has any questions, or I think Rob's going to throw some things out here that I'll try to answer for you. And thank you for having me in.
Yeah. So, one of the things you hear a lot, beginning trout anglers or just beginning fly fishermen and talking about saltwaters, they're pretty, intimidated by the saltwater idea of saltwater fishing, and you got to cast really far and it's really windy all the time. And the guides are jerks. And, if you don't make the cast and all that stuff, and, kind of what advice, do you have kind of for beginners to kind of make that jump and how to make it a successful trip?
Yeah, that's a good question, because certain parts of Florida have a reputation for the guides being a little, we'll just say, grumpy. Like today we were fishing. I had a father, son, and his wife came along too. So we had three in the boat. We don't normally do that, but she was really little. It was his birthday, and he wanted to treat his dad to a trip. So yeah, you could, and it was a little windy today, not bad, maybe 10 or 12. But we were inshore fishing. So basically what we're doing is we're fishing on the lee side of little islands and stuff. So you're not really in much wind. I mean, probably the most wind that we were casting in today was maybe 5, because we were able to avoid it. And for most species, we can do that. Tarpon, on the other hand, tend to be out in the open. So you don't have the protection of islands and mangroves. But yes, it doesn't mean, you don't have to start with tarpon. In the later summer, when we fish the smaller, or we'll just say teenagers, it tends to be a little warmer. Temperatures here, normally a warm day is going to be high 80s, low 90s. Down the water, we always seem to have a little bit of breeze. So with water clarity being a little darker in the late summer due to the summer rains that normally start in June, you can get quite a bit closer. And if you can get a 40-foot cast, maybe even the last tarpon we hooked was a mature fish, was probably a 25-foot cast. And that was just last week. So yes, it can be windy, and yes, it can be challenging, and yes, really, really big fish do not make you a better caster most of the time. When you see a torpedo coming at you that you don't even think could be a fish, a lot of anglers, including anglers that have fished a long time, tend to get the buck fever, if you will. But that's part of learning. It's just like, you didn't run out to the river and just start banging trout and catch them all the time. You kept working on it and you got better. It's the same here. You don't, we can almost always catch fish any day, unless it's just a horrible storm. So we just start, what I normally do is we get in the boat and I let you cast a little bit. I might give you some tips. I am a casting instructor, so we kind of get you. I'm not going to yell at you. I tell people, in all the years, I've been here about 20 years now, and I said, no one has ever called me and asked and say, hey, I'd like you to take me fishing, and I'm going to pay you a lot of money. Would you please yell at me when I mess up? No one ever asked for that. So I just don't do that. I don't like to yell. I'd rather just kind of take a second and make a small little tip and let you go from there, and we'll just work on it together.
Yeah. And it's another thing to kind of touch on for, first timers, and I've seen it hosting trips to saltwater trips, is, kind of things to work on, before your trip. A lot of people don't practice or do anything. They show up and they waste the first, day or two, and kind of, what you should be working on to kind of help yourself to be.
Yeah. I get a lot of guys that they get in the boat and they're a little rusty. I'm like, well, you said you were going to try this and that. And when's the last time you cast a fly rod? Oh, last year when I was with you. Well, of course you're going to be rusty because it doesn't matter what activity you're doing. It could be dolphin or tennis or whatever. If you haven't done it in a year, you're going to be rusty. So yeah, what I would suggest is don't worry about casting really far. That don't trying to cast a whole fly line is not needed. Don't. I would like you to have, if you're going to come down and get ready, I want you to try to get a rod in a weight class that you think you're going to be using, or maybe two. And if you don't have one, borrow one or go to the shop and get one. I'm sure they've got demos they can help you with. And go out and throw some flip flops or frisbees around. Give yourself targets and try to hit your targets. Get small targets and try to hit that target with a piece of yarn or something on end of your leader with as few casts as possible, and work on accuracy. I wouldn't, if you're kind of getting into it, I would say don't work on anything beyond 60 feet. Maybe have targets at 25, 35, 45, 55. And use those as your targets, but have small targets and try to see how quickly you can get to that target. Another thing you can do, like when we fish backcountry a lot, sometimes we're fishing around mangroves. So you're trying to kind of get that fly like under the tree or under the bush, a picnic table, a card table, a chair, anything. Stick something out there so you can try to get that little piece of yarn to go underneath it. A lot of times the fish are tucked up under the bushes, and being able to get that fly a little bit underneath, meaning more of a sidearm cast. Quite often I'll tell people they're casting and they're coming over the top and the fly's coming down in a big open loop and it's hitting the tree. And I say, okay, I'm going to take this rock and I put it in your hand. Show me how you throw that rock under those trees. And he goes, well, I go like this and I throw it underneath, sidearm, like you're skipping a rock. I said, okay, well, that's right. Then why are you trying to come over the top and get under the tree? Do the same thing like you're trying to skip the rock. But that's how I try to teach, by just using simple analogies to give you a way to make it easier for you to accomplish what you're trying to do. So practice with rods you're going to be probably using. I know sometimes it may be snowing there and that could be tough, or wherever you are, but at least get your hands on them and try to do it a little bit. Ask lots of questions. Don't be afraid to ask the guides questions. Most guides are pretty good about it, even though sometimes we're tired after fishing. If you have good questions, we'll try to give you good answers.
Awesome. We got a few questions coming in from people watching. One question is, there much shore kind of wading fishing on your own, or is it mostly just kind of boat guided stuff?
That's a good question. Our area does not have a lot of wade fishing areas. It has a lot of kayak access stuff that's very close to us, so you can hop in a little kayak on your own and paddle out across the little channel and get on a flat, and then you can get out and wade. The beach access is the whole length of the island is in all the barrier keys. If you can get a car on it, you can get out there and go fish. So from all of Boca, all of Little Gasparilla is boat access only, so you'd have to have a boat or a kayak. And then there's parts of the upper Charlotte Harbor that you can get out and wade. I would say there's not a lot of it other than on the beaches, but there is some. And and like I say, and from May on, the snook, our snook, our redfish, our sea trout all go on the outside to the beach. That's where they spawn. So it's a great opportunity, whether you're in Captiva or Sanibel or Boca, during the summer months, starting in May, to get shots at pretty nice sized fish. Some of the female snook could be over 30 inches. And you don't cast out far. They swim along the wash close to where the waves come in. So they're only 5 to 10 feet out. And if you go out in the mornings with the light behind you, the sun coming up, you can see them coming and sit up and wait, make a cast, let it sit, wait for the fish to approach it, and then strip it away from him, and he or she will eat it. And that doesn't have to be a really long cast. And you can do it all on your own with a simple, any type of small white bait fish fly, things like this. Small little white things that look like a little fish. It can be all white. It doesn't have to be anything special for doing that. And there's other species you'll catch mixed in there. There'll be jacks, and there'll be ladyfish. There'll be Gulf kings. And occasionally you might get a small redfish, and I know a few guys will be out there in the morning sometime and get a pompano, and occasionally have a large tarpon swim up to them and scare the bejeebus out of them, because it can happen. But normally, if you're fishing for the snook and stuff, you're probably not going to be rigged for a larger tarpon, but they will give you an opportunity, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's some great kayak and paddleboard opportunities. I've just done that a little bit down there off of Ding Darling on Sanibel, and areas like that are pretty cool. Check
There's
out.
tons of rental places real close. They'll bring it.
Yep.
If you're staying on the island, they'll bring the stuff to you. They'll give you the stuff. When you're done, you call them, they come and get it.
Yep. They make it easy. Another guy, let's see. Oh, what rod weights? He missed that part. So yeah, 7,
Okay.
8, 9.
Okay, yeah. You can fish as light as a 6 weight, depending on, obviously not for tarpon. If we're fishing juvenile tarpon, which are, we'll just say juveniles are babies, they can be trout size, and they'll get in tidal creeks, and you could use a 6 weight. You can use a 6 weight for a number of our inshore species, snook, trout, and redfish. And a good solid 6 weight saltwater rod will a lot of times do just as well as an 8 weight. It may be a little bit different fighting the fish, just like a 3 is going to be different than a 5, but you can use that. So I would say a 6 is going to be the lightest for our inshore. We probably 6, 7, and 8s are what we're going to use for most of our inshore, and then medium-sized tarpon or cobia will start to be into the 9s, and then when we're getting to mature fish, we're going to be looking at 10s, 11s, and even 12s. But I don't unless you're used to using a 12, I'm not going to put it in your hands. I don't think I wouldn't suggest you use it. I know they say, well, a 12 is bigger and stronger, so you can fight big fish. Well, there's some truth to that. But there's also truth that if you can't cast that rod, you can't hook that fish, you're not going to fight that fish. So I used to do a lot of 11s and 12s in a boat. Now I've backed down to 10s and 11s, because I want you to hook a fish, because you can't fight a fish if you can't hook a fish.
Yep. Another question is kind of what types of sink rate lines we're using.
Okay.
Whether they're sinking or floating, or prominently what fly lines are you guys?
I would say 95% of the time we're all floating.
Yep.
I don't really use sink tips at all. Even when we're fishing big tarpon, we rarely are fishing in more than 10 feet of water. Probably 6 to 8 is the average. A tarpon eats up, so we don't want the fly to be below him. He doesn't go down and eat it. He comes at it and eats it, or he comes up and eats it. And inshore, most of the time we're fishing in less than 4 feet of water. We're sight fishing quite often. If the light's good, a lot of times we're fishing in 12 to 24 inches of water. So we're primarily fishing dry lines. I've started using I've been using some clear floating tips over the last couple of years, and I'm not going to say it's going to double your catch rate or anything, but I believe it kind of helps a little bit, having a little less visible, like a longer leader. Yep. So I've found those to be pretty handy lately, and a number of companies make floating clear tip lines.
Yep. Another question, when you're fishing mangroves or, more of the backcountry area, typically how long of a cast are you kind of making in those situations?
I would say, obviously the longer you can cast, the better, because you can stay away from the fish and it's less likely the boat is going to spook them. In the winter months, when we have really low tides, we will get out and wade fish, and then you can get a little bit closer. But I would say on average, like today, I would say today we were probably 45. This son, Marshall, I think he's from the Denver area. He could cast a little further, but I would say generally, I would say 45 to 60 is a pretty consistent average. If you can cast further, that's great. If you can't, you can still get the job done.
Yep.
You just go a little slower and try to stay ahead of the bow when we're casting, not casting like in a drift boat. Not you don't if you're in the bow, you're not casting at the back of the boat towards the shore. And you can catch fish. If the water's a little cloudy or off color, you can get a little closer to them, um, and then you can catch them at maybe under 45 feet.
Yep. Yeah, when me and Andy fished down there, I felt like we caught some that were pretty close to the boat. You didn't have to cast real far for some of those juvenile snook and stuff in the backcountry. In some places it's tight. You're in a little opening in the mangroves that you can't really cast that far because you got mangroves on either side. So, and most of those places are dirtier, so you can get the boat pretty close.
In the winter time, as the water gets cool, they will tend to go into a lot of these spots that have darker, muddier bottoms, and they're protected from the wind, so the water's a little warmer, and you have options to you can catch fish at 35 to 45 feet.
Yep.
Because the water you can't see them, they can't see you. They're looking for something moving. You throw something in there that's a little bit off, different color than the water. They see something dark, it looks like food. It's trying to get away from them. They grab it.
Yeah, and you're casting 35, 45 feet with an 8-weight and an unweighted fly with no wind. It's fairly easy to do.
Yes.
It's not like casting a 5-weight or a 3-weight 45 feet. So
I had a guy fish a 5-weight with me up last week. He said, I bought it for a fishing trip and I didn't get to use it. And he got a something Orvis 5-weight finesse, whatever it was. And he said, can I fish it? I was like, of course you can. So he used his 5-weight.
Here's another good question. Kind of size and length of leader material and stuff like that you guys are using down there.
We're mostly using all fluorocarbon leaders. You can get it tapered and add a bite tippet at the end if you need to. I kind of like to tie my own. I'm kind of a little bit old school on that, and I'll taper them down on most of my like a 7 or 8 weight. I'm going to have a chunk of 40, a chunk of 30, and then I may have I generally don't go below 25 just because of the snook's mouths are abrasive and they don't bite through the line, but it's like sandpaper and they'll wear it down and you can lose the fish. And if you get a big one, he's probably going to eat your 25 right up anyways. But it's not fancy leaders. Tarpon I do more traditional on a 10s and 11 weights. I've got a section of 50 for my butt section and a section of 40 on my butt section. I do the bimini twist, the loop-to-loop connections, and then I'm going to have a section of my bite tip, but that might be 50 or 60. I'm really not going over 60 anymore, just because boaters and stuff have made it a little fussier. I want my guys to hook the fish.
Yeah.
And depending on where they're hooked, you can land a pretty big fish on 50 or 60 pound bite tippet. And that bite tippet section is 12 inches or a little more.
So you're a Scott Fly Rods pro on our pro staff. So, we had a pretty good video the other night from Theo, our rep, about the new sector fly rod. And what are your kind of thoughts on that guy too?
It's a really nice rod. We talked about this before we started this link. Does it feel a lot different than the Meridian? Personally, I don't think it feels a lot different. I like some of the components they put on it. I believe it may have a little bit more lifting power, so you can pick up a little bit more line off the water. I have them in several weights right now, and I cast them side by side with some of the Meridians. It's a great rod. I've been with Scott for a long time, and I really like what they do. It casts well. I mean, there's a lot of great line. Sage has got great rods. Loomis has got great rods. Orvis has got great rods. There's a lot of great rods out there. The Sector is a exceptionally nice rod. I'm happy. I'm proud that I'm with the pro staff with Scott, because it seems like every time they come out with a new rod and it goes to the Fly Tackle Dealer Show, they win Best of Show.
Yep.
And they've done it a number of years. And, I like that they're a Colorado company. They're made in the USA. The reels I use are Nautilus. They're made in the USA. I know Nautilus did have a period of time when they were having struggles getting anodizing done, and that kind of put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. But the reels are pretty bulletproof. I like stuff that lasts forever, and you don't have to do a lot to it.
Yeah. So yeah, you've also done some hosted trips to Mexico, Cuba, etc.
Yeah. People ask me, where have you been? I here and there and so on and so forth. I would say 100% Cuba was my favorite place to fish. I just can't describe how it's just that there's nobody down there. It's like having your own water. I mean, I am sure there's hundreds, if not thousands, of fish that have never had a hook in their mouth that swim around down there. The first time I went there, I went with a gentleman who had been there before, and he said, why don't you take the bow first? And we were looking at some permit, and I got some shots of permit right off the bat. Didn't catch one right off the bat. Saw a bonefish pop up, caught one. And we moved over to the next area, and the gentleman who was in the boat with me, sharing the boat that day, popped up, and we pulled across this little flat area, and it was almost like there wasn't any water there. It was so clear that it was like we were just floating on air. And I had my video camera with me. And I remember he made a cast at some bonefish, and like the whole school charged to fly. And I sat there and I didn't even hit record because I was just amazed at how aggressive they were. If I truly believe if you were just really wanting to target bonefish and you considered yourself a medium to above average caster, I think you could catch 100 in one day. Wow. There's that many fish and they're that aggressive. Most of the times, if you saw bonefish, and bonefish is kind of like you target permit and tarpon, and then if that wasn't right, you would just go fish bones and catch them.
Yep.
Rarely, first or second cast was a fish, every time. Amazing fishery. The guide's great. They worked hard. They were really funny. Younger guys. They loved the Americans. I'm not sure at this point what the traveling arrangements are to Cuba, so I can't answer that. But it should be a bucket list for just about anybody that wants to do something like that. It's those fish eat. Another really fun one that's a really easy trip to do is the New Orleans red fishing. Those must be the dumbest redfish in the entire planet. They are giant, and you think about how we normally fish and present a fly to our fish carefully. These ones, there's his head. Where do you cast? Right here. Smash him on the head, and they attack it. If you can't see him because the water's off color and you hit him in the tail, he'll probably spin around and eat it. And these are fish that an average size fish is over 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Because they off color water, quite often your casts are 40 feet, not much more, because a lot of times you can't see them and you're only casting when you can see them. So yeah, they can be right next to the boat and you can thump them on the head and they eat it like they haven't eaten in a year. And they're pretty good sized fish. So yeah, that's a great trip. There's a bunch of good guides. I have some personal friends that live in New Orleans. So if anybody wanted to contact me about that, I'll set them up with these guys. One of them in particular, Miles, actually has built his own little mini cabin thing next to his house, so you can stay right there with him. He has funny casting targets and goofy stuff, coolers with beer and stuff, places to eat right close by. you get up in the morning, you jump in the truck with him, and off you go.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, we had a kind of a, other questions about hosted trips and stuff. And, we, give us a call if you're looking at the shop for kind of other hosted trips, and Cuba, especially. There's a couple operations that, set up trips down there, and those travel restrictions are always kind of changing, and it's a ever evolving thing, but those guys deal with it every day. So us or Jamie can put you in touch with, the right guys to make sure you're on the up and up. And we do have a couple other trips coming up too. Zach, our guide guy at the shop, is doing a trip down to Ishkalak, Mexico this fall, October. I got a trip next spring going to Belize to Ambergris Cay. So yeah, hit us up at the shop for other hosted trips as well. I know you've been to Ishkalak, right?
Yeah, I've
JD?
been to both Ambergris and Ishkalak. Really fun areas. Ishkalak is I would go to Ishkalak just for permit.
Yeah.
Bonefish are really little there. The ones that I saw, Zach has been there longer, and he's probably seen some of the bigger ones that might be around. And there is some tarpon there. I only went once a few years ago in October. So when we were there, the outside water, the reef area was all blown out. So we mostly fished back in the bay. But the 3 of the 5 days we were able to fish, we'd stop the boat, and within 5 minutes we were casting a permit.
Yeah.
Every day. I would say on the first 2 days that we fished, we probably saw at least 25 permit. And the last day was the best weather day, and we probably saw close to 50. So not giant ones, all sizes. Probably I would say an Ishkalak permit averages 7 to 12 pounds would be my best guess. Maybe fish topping out at 20-ish, but it's still permit. And not all. It's kind of it's at the very end of the road kind of deal, so the pressure's not huge. And there is some tarpon, depending on when you go there, and some smaller tarpon, I think probably there year round. And Belize Ambergris is another great one where you can catch all three. My experience was I never found many big fish, but there was plenty of fish to like to eat. So that's a great place to cut your teeth if you want to do the bonefish tarpon permit place.
Yep. Let's see here. Oh, another question, asking about, wade fishing spots nearby you guys. I mean, right there, Boca Grande, the beach, especially during the warmer months, is the place to be. It's, there's tons of access to the beach, and there's snook and redfish out there sometimes. There's ladyfish and Spanish mackerel, and go out there early in the morning. It's a great place to be. Looking for something that's not on the beach, down in Sanibel, you can go through Ding Darling. Is a pretty easy place right off the road.
Yeah.
There's some culverts and things to flats to fish in there. So.
And then if you want to try something different, or if you're down in that neck of the woods, Capt and Sanibel, I've got a couple guide friends that do some peacock bass fishing down the Everglades. Some of it can be done from your car. You can have a rental car and drive it down and do it on your own, or they'll put you in these little boats and run you around. Not big fish, but you can catch a lot. You can catch peacock bass. There's 2 kinds of cichlids. You can catch regular bass. Some of the times you can catch snook and tarpon in the same deal, and Oscars, like the fish tank Oscars,
Yeah.
black and orange ones. Man, those things pull hard. You can do a 5 or a 6 weight. The flies aren't that big. The fish are super aggressive. It's like turbocharged bluegills.
Yeah.
They eat, and it's really fun.
Yeah, those fish pretty much are in every ditch and piece of water down there in South Florida, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that about does it for us. I don't think we covered all the questions I see in the live chat. Yeah, thanks for being on and talking with us, Jamie. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you down there in a couple weeks.
Yep. Moving pops.
Yep.
All right.
No,
Go ahead.
no Walmart boats this time, though. I don't have Andy with me. Pops is a little too old to put in the rubber raft for the dock lights.
We'll just give you some floaties and let you go.
Yeah, I'll have to go solo with the floaties at night.
Perfect.
All right, gang. Well, thanks for having me on. I hope I answered some questions for you. These guys will have my information if anybody wants to call and talk later and ask any other questions or inquire about anything. I'd be happy to do my best to answer questions for you.
Thanks, Jamie.
You're welcome, guys.
All right. Y'all have a good night.
Yep. Thanks for tuning in.
For sure.
Yeah.
See ya.
Yeah.
Thank you all for tuning in tonight. I had some technical difficulties on my end, so I'm not seeing many of the comments or any of the comments, unfortunately, but I am live streaming. I don't know what happened. So I'm going to be, we're going to be live tomorrow. Don't forget. And it's going to be 5. Matt Bennett, he's a great fly tyer. Incredible fly tyer, in fact. Watching him is extremely fun, extremely interesting. So it's worth the price of admission, which is free, and come with a cocktail and just sit back and enjoy. He is a incredible tyer. And remember to sign up for our drawings. If you're on your iPhone or smartphone, it's going to be down there. There's going to be a little arrow you see over here. You push that arrow, it'll expand our details, and then from there you will be able to see the link where you can sign up for our drawing, and then you can tomorrow as well. Also, go watch our Orvis video. We brought Orvis in this year. Put that up on YouTube, and we appreciate you all watching, sticking with us through this. Thanks for sticking with me as I kind of sorted out my internet connectivity for the first 10 minutes of this video. And feel free to give us a call, 970-385-4081, or check us out at Duranglers.com. And yeah, we got some hosted trips coming up. And I can say where Zach's going. I went there 2 years ago in 2018. Took a trip there, and I cast to 3 permit. That's, you know, what you get when you're hosting the trip. So I always want to give other people shots, but I casted to 3. I caught the first one, the second one ate, and my line wrapped around my eyelet, bent me out. Third one followed me 60 feet to the boat, and then kind of swam off, didn't care. So that place is an incredible place to go try and catch permit. You can just rail on bonefish all day too. I know Jamie said they're small, but they're super fun if you ask me. And then juvenile tarpon, which is extremely fun. And then jacks, barracuda, some snook, a whole lot of other stuff. So anyway, check those out. And we got Matt Bennett live tomorrow night, and then Saturday at noon our time in Durango. I'm going to be doing a beginner's Euro-nymphing clinic. So that'll be here on YouTube, as well as we're going to try and make it live on Facebook Live as well. So look forward to seeing you all there, and thanks everyone for tuning in. You have a good one. Take care.